In this video, I'm going to be showing you the exact system that we use at Legacy AI to build an online classroom assistant for various online course instructors. I'll be breaking down the template step by step so you can follow along and build your own classroom assistant today. And if you are an online course instructor and you want to see something similar being implemented into your website or your online courses, you can follow the link in the description and book a free consultation call with us. Let's have a talk. Anyway, let's jump straight to it. Okay, so I'm in VoiceFlow at the moment, and this is actually a system a simplified template that we actually built for one of the online course instructors for machine learning. And the whole point of this classroom assistant is to be able to answer questions that students might have about the course, because one problem that they identify is that usually students just keep emailing him about like all the problems that they have about the course and all the questions that they have about the course, and he just doesn't have the time to respond to every single one of them every day. So this was able to actually pull knowledge from the courses and also pull an external knowledge base about machine learning, about a specific topic that the course is about, and then is able to answer any question the students might have. It also has a built-in code debugger, because with the machine learning course, like many of the students actually have to code up some of the projects or some of the homework themselves, and they often find it hard to debug their codes, and they often email again the instructors about specific questions they have about the code, or they try to search online in Google or use ChatGPT, which is not always the most accurate thing for debugging codes. So what we've done here is actually a built-in code debugger within the classroom assistant that the student can just copy and paste their code, and the AI chatbot assistant, will be able to output the corresponding correct codes and identify what's wrong with the code and output the correct code. So what's the value behind this build? Well, obviously, as I mentioned, it's actually save both the students and the instructors time in the back and forth between asking questions, because this allows the students to get the answers immediately answered, and they can move on to the next module, and that can actually help out and also makes their learning experience much faster for the students as well as providing much better customer experience, because they're able to debug and troubleshoot their codes immediately without waiting for the instructors' responses. And obviously, it also helps save the instructors time answering all these different questions the instructor might have. So let's actually test it out. Hi there, I'm here to answer any questions you might have about the machine learning course. Ask me anything. So let's say I have a question about this module. I'm going to help you with a question about the course. So I am struggling with module 3.6, which is Bootstrap. I don't seem to understand the concept behind. Then it basically should be able to immediately say what's wrong. So bootstrapping is a resampling technique, to estimate statistic, so it's basically, if you've done machine learning before, you know this is a sampling technique, and it basically explains to you briefly and break it down very simply what it is. And used to estimate competence for statistic, providing insight to use variability, etc. And if the students do ask serious question and the AI actually doesn't help answer the student's question, then the questions can be actually forwarded to the instructor. So let's say no. Then we'll capture the name, which is @123@gmail.com. So this is actually a lead capture process, and if you haven't already, you can check out my 1-hour lead capture tutorial, which I explained briefly, actually in details, how to do the entire lead capture process in VoiceFlow. Would you like to subscribe? So this is what I meant by like an extra upsell, because once you've collected the names and the emails, you can actually ask them if they want to be in a newsletter where you can send them free resources, right, as like subscription. And let's say yes. Thank you for the response. Our team will reach out to you. Do you have any questions? Let's say no. Now I actually want to test out the debug. So let's say I need help debugging my code. Tell me which part you're stuck on. So I actually went ahead and already has like a code snippet that I know has errors in it. So let's see how well it responds. So it should be able to pull out what's wrong with the code and actually gives out the key fixes. So you can see here there's several syntax errors in this code. If you know Python, you know that this should be a lowercase, and they mix up the difference between the assignment operator and comparison. So and also the multiplication operator is used incorrectly, and the print statement is incorrect. So it's a corrected version, which the students can now just copy and paste, but they also understand what are the key fixes and what does this version do. So it's very clear to your students what exactly went wrong, why did it went wrong, and what's the corrected version. Instead of just using ChatGPT, basically telling you, oh, this is the correct version, and that's it, because that way the students don't learn anything, right? So yeah, this is the key features of these very simple classroom assistant. So let's head into VoiceFlow and see how I actually built it. Okay, so we are at VoiceFlow at the moment in the home screen. So I'm just going to break it down and actually explain to you what happens here. So we have start, and then you have a very simple greeting message, right? And say, hi, I'm here to help out with any questions you have about the course. Ask me anything. And to make it sound a little bit more natural and less robotic, you can use variants within VoiceFlow in the message box, and it will generate around 5 variants of this exact same message, but just slightly differently, just to give it a change of vibe, so it doesn't give out the exact same message every time. And then you basically have different buttons that you can add, right? So one of the options is I have a question about this module, and you need help debugging my code. So these are two main options that we offer, but the no match is basically there for in case the students doesn't actually type it, doesn't actually choose. So for example, they didn't choose anything, but they instead decide to type. So I need help with my course. Let's say they didn't choose these buttons, but they want to type something. This is what the no match is for. Then the no match will save this reply to last utterance, and they will actually go through debug or FAQ. So this is basically used to decide whether the student's query is actually they want to debug a code, or do they have questions about the code, right? So basically, I'll break it down into simpler terms, is that we're using the new prompt block within VoiceFlow. So if you go to here and you drag it here, this is the new prompt block. By the way, I've made a video explaining what's the difference between prompt block and set AI and response AI, but you can check this out. But in short, you will definitely want to use the prompt block as soon as possible, because they're going to be the set AI and response AI blocks are going to be deprecated pretty soon. So I'm just going to delete that. But basically, it goes through here to save the user's reply to last utterance, and then it would go through the prompt block, basically saying debug or FAQ. So it basically said it's a simplified form that we use, but you can extend upon it. Your highly intelligent intent classifier designed to classify an user's intent, whether they need help debugging code or a question about the machine learning course. If the user needs help with debugging code, output debug. If there's a question about the machine learning course, output FAQ. If it's neither, output NA, right? So obviously, the prompt that we used was a little bit more detailed, because I don't want to so the prompt that we use is actually a little bit more detailed, but you get the logic behind it. You can easily build upon this and actually extend upon it using prompt engineering. If you want to learn more about prompt engineering, let me know, and I'll actually try to break it down as much as possible in the prompt engineering video. So the user this is basically what we call few-shot prompting. So the new prompt block in VoiceFlow actually allows you to do few-shot prompting much easier than the old response AI block. And the user basically said, I need help fixing a bug with my code. And the agent will say, debug, right? If a question about linear regression, that's FAQ. Hi, how are you? How's the weather? So obviously that's not FAQ and that's not debug, so it's going to output NA, right? So, and for the settings, we use GPT 3.5 Turbo, but we this GPT 4 Mini is probably better for the job. But it's up to you what choice you want to use. So we did some testing in the final build, and we actually stick with 3.5 Turbo. But you can easily test it yourself about the latency and the cost of the build, which one suits you better, and you can actually make the adjustment accordingly, and you can choose different modules that you want. But for now, let's just stick with 3.5 Turbo, right? So if you run this, right, NA, right? So basically, they didn't actually run. So if I just run this, and then last utterance, let's say, is I need help with my code. Right, so then we just solve a debug. Exactly. Moving on. And it basically then go through an if condition statement. Basically say if the last response is debug, then this will happen. If the last response is FAQ, it will basically go through due to a component, which is module question, which I'll explain in a bit. And if anything else, then it's going to redirect the user, basically say, I'm here to help you debugging code and answer any question you might have about the course only. Let's keep it on topic, right? So if the student is just asking like random things, it's not going to do anything. It's going to redirect them to actually answer, to only do debug or FAQ only. And if the last response is debug, it will basically go through the debug blocks. And it will go through the same block as if the student has actually chosen when they first run this module. Remember how there was I have a question about this module, I need help debugging my code. If the students select that, it will go through the debug code start block. And this block also can be accessed if the student type, I need help debugging my code in the chatbot, and using the prompt block that we just used, which would classify the thing as debug, right? And basically, it would just say, seem like you need some help with your code. Go ahead and show me which part you need help with, right? And the student will then answer the questions, will try to answer the questions, and it will go through what we called the prompt block, which is a coder. So I basically prompted such that you are a highly intelligent expert code debugger. Your role is to debug any code written by the user in last utterance, highlighting what went wrong, what the type of error is, and what the user should do to fix it. Remember to be as accurate as possible and redirect the user to focus on asking coding questions if last utterance is not about coding. Always maintain a friendly and helpful tone to the user. Never mention you're an AI. So I'll just give a few short prompting, which is some example codes that have errors in it. So in this case, the syntax is wrong of the dictionary, and also this is dictionary, right? But then the syntax of this dictionary is wrong because there's a missing a colon here in Python, and it will give a very detailed explanation. This is an example. Again, this is few short prompting. I give a second example as well. You can read it like yourselves, what's wrong with the code, and the agent will explain, right? And then from here, I'm using ChatGPT 4 Mini, just simply because the cost is lower and is able to also debug the code just as well as a GPT-4o. But again, in the new prompt block, you can actually test out the latency and the token cost of the different models, and you can adjust the model accordingly depending on your need, on your specific need for latency and your specific budget. Now, let's go back to the main thing where decoder, after the coder has responded and actually output where the error is, it will then gives the user an option to go back to the main menu, or if it's no match, meaning the user types something, it will then save the reply to last utterance and do this back and forth coding question where if the user has more coding questions. So obviously this is a simplified template to what we actually built, because essentially the way to optimize this further is basically to, again, go through this. You can go through this classification because you can argue that there's a case where in the no match, the students might type something like, okay, well, I'm done with debugging. Now I have a question about the course, right? So in this case, you don't want to redirect them to the whole debug code block, if that makes sense. In this case, you would just want to reconnect it back to the debug or FAQ prompt, and then it will go through the entire motion of classifying if the user actually wants to debug or if the user just have a question about the course, right? Hopefully that makes sense. There's some optimization you can do here. I'm just giving you a very simplified template of what you can do, and I mean, it's up to you to kind of adjust it to your use case, because I can't possibly think of all the different use cases, right? It's up to you guys to kind of take this template, tweak it, change some of the logic to make it more efficient, to build upon it, and actually build a finalized product, right? So anyway, let me go to the module question. So if the user has a question about this module, it will go to a component. If you didn't know, a component in VoiceFlow is kind of like a nest sequence. So if you go to this component, it will directly jump to this component called module question. The reason is because, as you can see, this module question is quite big. And if I were to put it in home, it would basically be an extremely large build, which is very hard to maintain and very hard to track where everything is. So I recommend, if you're working on larger projects, definitely make use of components if you haven't already. The way you do it is literally, if you have this connection, right, if you break it and you just right click and then just break it here, and then you go to actions and then just go component, right? So I'm not going to do that here, but you can essentially add components from here as well. And let's jump to the actual component, which is the module question. So whenever a student basically have a question about the module, it will go to the enter block and it will go through the module question start 1. And it will basically ask, okay, what would you like to know about this module? And again, there are different variants that the students can use to kind of redirect them or make it more interesting. And then the student can choose to take me back, or they have a question about the course. If they have a question about the course, it will say ask away, and it will save the user's question to last utterance, right? And once it saves the user's question to last utterance, I'm just going to replace using a set variable, basically to set the variable name user question to last utterance, which was the user's query, and it will then go through a prompt block called FAQ answering. Now, what that is just another system prompt that we use as an FAQ module. So you're a highly intelligent expert FAQ assistant for students in the machine learning course. Your role is to answer any questions students might have about the course using your knowledge of machine learning. The question is not related to the course. We direct the user to ask specific questions about the course. So these are some of the few shots prompting, where I basically like, how's the football game, which is like a general rubbish question. And the agent will basically redirect the user to focus only on the course. Now, the reason this prompt is obviously oversimplified, and this is not actually what we did for the actual projects, is because it should essentially go through a knowledge-based search within the block, which basically the knowledge-based search, which will include all the files and documents and all the necessary resources about the specific course. But for the purpose of this video, I've left out all the knowledge-based files because, well, it's not, because this is just a general template. You should always adjust it to your use cases. I don't want you guys to just copy and paste this template, right? Because there's so many things that you actually need to extend upon this template to be able to actually work for your actual use cases, right? And I'm just giving you the basic skeleton of a possible build. And so basically what you want to do actually is use a KB search, and the question is last utterance, and you want to save the chunks to a variable, right? And then you can adjust the chunk limit here. So if you didn't know, KB search is a new block alongside the prompt block that VoiceFlow has just released. So I would highly recommend you to use the KB search block instead of the traditional response AI knowledge-based search, right? Because they're being deprecated. So you don't want to do the response AI. You don't want to use these two anymore, right? So again, as I mentioned, you should be using the actual assets from your client or from the actual courses to actually do the KB search and then do the prompt block. And you should mention use resources. So in your prompt, right, you should probably say something like use chunks, right, to assist you, right? I'm not going to say that here, but you can see how we can extend upon this prompt. And we can also format this prompt properly with a markdown format, if you didn't know already. But for the purposes of this video, I'm just going to use AI itself to actually do the actual FAQ answering. And the next thing I'm going to do is basically set AI response to last response, which means that the response from this prompt block, it should be the solution, should be the answer of the FAQ part, right? So I'm going to save that last response variable to an actual variable called AI response. And from there, we basically ask the students, does this answer your questions, right? And from there, the student can say yes or no. If it does answer the questions, we will ask the student, do you have any additional questions about this module? If it's yes, then we go back to the start and basically ask the student to ask away. If it's no, then we go back to the start menu, right? And if it's no match, meaning that the students type something instead of choosing yes or no, then it will go back to the save users to last utterance, and it will go through the entire FAQ purposes again, right? I hope that makes sense. It's very simple logic. It looks complicated, but it's actually quite simple logic. And if the AI doesn't actually answer the student's question and the student say no, it will go to sorry to hear that. We'll send an inquiry to the classroom where the instructor can answer questions. And then we're basically collecting their names and emails and forward the questions to the actual course instructor so they can answer the questions. What's your name? Save your reply to name. And then what's the best email to reach out to you? And it will save it to email. And this is a very good upsell opportunities. Basically, just say, would you like to subscribe to our newsletter for extra free resources? And they have an option to choose yes or no. If they choose yes, then you can set a variable, which is called newsletter, to yes. And if they say no, you can set a variable called newsletter to no. Right? This is just for the online course instructor to actually know, okay, this student actually is interested in subscribing to my newsletter. So maybe I can send out some free value or some free resources in those emails to keep them engaged. This could be a very good way for anyone basically to generate some extra leads for them, so they can potentially later down the line, if they have a new course, they can try to email them, let them know, hey, we've done a second course, which is highly related to the first course that you took, and I highly recommend you take this course, etc. Right? So you can see the use case for this. And after you collect all these variables, you send a post API request to Airtable to collect the data, and you basically have the records, and you have the name, email, user question, the answer, the AI gave, and the newsletter, right? And then you basically say, perfect, I've sent it off to your team, right? So all of these information is done through a post API request. So if you're not sure how to do that, you can watch the 1 hour lead capture video in the description, and I've explained to you in detail how to do an integration between VoiceFlow and Airtable to do a lead capture process. Now, this is the Airtable that will basically contains all the fields that you will collect from VoiceFlow, contain name, email, user question, the response that the AI gave, and whether they want to be in the newsletter or not. And from there, you can just forward this database to your clients, and they will be able to track everything and actually respond to the student correspondingly. So yeah, this is it. This is all from me today. So this is a kind of an overview of the template that we use as a classroom assistant. Obviously, again, most of the prompts are actually not optimized in this template. I highly recommend you to actually go through the prompt engineering process to actually do the prompt properly. And of course, you will need the knowledge base from your specific client to do this classroom FAQ assistance. And overall, there are a few things that you can change and tweak to optimize the entire flow. But this template is just to give you a high-level overview, to give you a skeleton idea of the basics of what you can do. And you can easily build upon this to extend it to your specific use cases. And if you find this tutorial helpful, please consider to like and subscribe. This will help me out a ton. And if you have a specific build, or if you want me to go through some prompt engineering concept with you, let me know in the comments below, and I will try to cover that in a future video. And again, if you are a course instructor, or if you're a business owner, and if you'd like to work with me on this specific project, again, you can use the link in the description to book a free consultation call with us today. That's it for me, guys. But before you go, remember to watch this video. My name is Edwin. I'm the founder of Legacy AI, alongside my friend Champion here. That's his real name, by the way. And together we offer voice-based and text-based AI solutions like the one you're seeing in this video to other businesses to help them save hours and hours of time and thousands of dollars spent on manual service tasks such as appointment scheduling, CRM integration, lead generation, etc. And if you're a business owner and you're interested to see how these AI solutions can help transform your business and improve your bottom line, follow the link in the description to book a free consultation call with us today.